Good morning, everyone. Uh, in this portion, we will discuss Article 1380 to 1389. Disclaimer: this is for educational purpose only. This is the uh, topic we have been discussed while we are in this part of article and obligation and contracts. So let's begin. What are rescissible contracts? So when you say rescissible contracts, they are actually valid. The essential requisites of a contract exist, but for some reason. So due to economic injury or damage to one of the person or to third persons like creditors, they can be rescinded. So now when you see voidable contracts, what is their status? So as discussed previously, they are valid until annulled. So there are actually four types of classes of defective contracts, and they are arranged from the least serious to the more serious defects. So the one with the least serious defect that we will tackle now is the rescissible contracts. So next to that is the voidable contract, and the more defective than the voidable contract is the unenforceable contract, and the most defective of all is the void contract. So we will discuss that and in the following article. But for now, we will proceed on the Article 1380. So in Article 1380, it says that contracts validly agreed upon may be rescinded in the cases established by law. So con- contracts validly agreed upon means all the essential elements or requisites exist. Therefore, it is legally effective. The remedy for a party, because there is an economic injury or damage to them or third persons, is that it can be rescinded. So the purpose is to secure reparation for the damage caused by a valid contract, especially in the enforcement of that contract would cause injustice. So proceed to Article 1381. It says that the following contracts are rescissible. So the first one is those which are entered into by the guardians whenever the wards whom they represent suffer lesion by more than one fourth of the value of the things which are the object thereof. Number two, those agreed upon in representation of absentees. If the latter suffer the lesion stated in the preceding number, those undertaken in fraud of creditors when the latter cannot in any other manner collect the claims due them. Number four, those which refer to things under litigation if they had been entered by the defendant without the knowledge and approval of the litigants or of competent judicial authority. Number five, all other contracts especially declared by law to be subject to rescission. So in Article 1381 obviously provides for the cases, situation, or instances like enumeration of what rescissible contracts are. Contracts entered into on behalf of wards, it is there that if a contract is entered into by the guardians in representation of the ward, and the ward suffered lesion by more than one fourth of the value of the things which is the object thereof, it is rescissible. So when you see ward, this is a person who is under guardianship because they are incapacitated. Usually they are minors, but the law doesn't explicitly limit it to minors. So let's proceed to the second enumeration in Article 1381 for rescissible contracts. It says contracts which are agreed upon in representation of absentees. It's actually the same explanation as number one, but this time they represent an absentee. An absentee is someone who disappears from their domiciles with their whereabouts being unknown, without leaving an agent to administer their property. That is very legal term, but essentially, if the absentee suffers lesion by more than one-fourth of the value of the property which is the object of the contracts, it entitles that absentee to rescind. As a general rule, lesion does not invalidate a contract as we discussed previously, but there are exceptions, and one of the exceptions is transactions entered into by guardians or representative of absentees. So now let's proceed to number 3. Contracts undertaken in fraud of creditors. The concept here is that if an action is made to defraud a creditor, the creditor has the right to rescind the contract. If the creditor can still collect in another manner, then the court will not rescind the contract. So, for example, scenario 1, wards and guardians. Let's explain number 1 with example so we can understand it better. So, let's say G is the guardian of W, the ward. So, there are two parties, the ward and the guardians. G sold the property of W to X, a third person, for 250,000 pesos. But the actual value of the property is 500,000 pesos. Does this fall under number 1? Let's analyze it. The guardian sold the ward's property, not his own. Is this contract resistable? We have to look at the lesion. What is lesion? It is the inadequacy of the price. In this case, the selling price of 250,000 pesos is clearly inadequate compared to the actual value of 500,000 pesos. Therefore, the award suffered lesion. However, Article 3181 explicitly requires the lesion to be more than one-fourth of the value. The inadequacy here is 250,000 pesos. 500k to 250,000. 250,000 divided by 500,000 is one half. Since one half is more than one-fourth, the legal requirement is met. Therefore, the sale is resistable contract. So now let's proceed to Article 1382. It says that payments made in a state of insolvency for obligations for those for payment the debtor could not be compelled at the time they were affected are also resistable. So let's discuss the difference between a resistable contract and a resistable payment. Article 1382 refers specifically to payments. For example, A while while insolvent pays B his debt which is not yet due. C and D are also creditors of A but cannot collect from A anymore. The key concept here is that the payment was made during a state of insolvency. Who can rescind this? The other creditors. C and D, A is insolvent, yet he preemptively paid one creditor, leaving the others with nothing. C and D can go to court to have the payment rescinded because it prejudiced them. Article 1382 says payments made in a state of insolvency for obligation whose fulfillment the debtor could not be compelled at the time they were effective are also resistable. This talks about premature payments made in a state of insolvency. The debtor doesn't need to be judicially declared insolvent. They just must be insolvent. Second, the debt, the debt was not yet due and demandable. Both conditions are required for the payment to be resistable. This again shows the enumeration in 1381 is not exclusive. Let's proceed to Article 1383. The action for rescission is subsidiary. It cannot be instituted except when the party suffering damage has no other legal means to obtain reparation for the same. 1294. So rescission is actually not a principal remedy. It is subsidiary. This means it is only available if the injured party has no other legal means for seeking redress or reparation for the damages they have suffered. The injured party has to prove that they have no other legal means aside from rescinding the contract. Article 1384 states, rescission shall be only to the extent necessary to cover the damages caused. Aside from not being a principal remedy, rescission does not entirely void the contract if it isn't necessary. It will only go up to the extent needed to cover the damages. The contract need not be set aside in its entirety by a partial rescission. The law wants to preserve or respect that contract because, after all, it is valid contract, except that a party suffered prejudice. The only purpose of rescission is to repair or cover the damage caused. Under Article 1383, the action for rescission is subsidiary. It cannot be instituted except when the party suffering damage has no other legal means to obtain reparation. While annulment is a primary remedy for voidable contracts, rescission is a last resort. What does this mean? Let's use an example. G sells two parcels of land belonging to M, award valued at 200,000 pesos each, total 400,000. G sells both to B for only 200,000. M suffered lesion of one half. However, if B, the buyer, is willing to pay the deficiency of 200,000 pesos, M can no longer rescind the contract. Rescission is subsidiary if there's another way to repair the damage, like paying the balance. Rescission won't happen. Article 1384, rescission shall be only to the extent necessary to cover the damage caused. Article 1384 is, uh, in the previous example, the 200,000 pesos bid exactly covers the value of one parcel of land. Therefore, you do not rescind the entire contract. You only rescind the sale of the unpaid parcel. The sale of the paid parcel remains perfectly valid. Rescission, aside from not being a principal remedy, rescission does not entirely void the contract if it isn't necessary. It will only go up to the extent needed to cover the damages. The contract needed not be set aside in its entirety by a partial rescission. The law wants to preserve or respect the contract because, after all, it is a valid contract, except that a party suffered prejudice. The only purpose of rescission is to repair or cover the damage caused. Article 1385. Rescission creates the obligation to return the things which were the objects of the contract, together with their fruits and the price with its interest. Consequently, it can be carried out only when he who demands rescission can return whatever he may be obliged to restore. Neither shall rescission take place when the things which are the object of the contract are legally in the possession of third persons who did not act in bad faith. In this case, indemnity for damages may be demanded from the person causing the loss. Rescission creates the obligation to return the things which were the object of the contract. This provision speaks about mutual restitution. Rescission creates an obligation of mutual restitution. As a general rule, the plaintiff or complainant who demands rescission must be able to return what has been received by virtue of that rescissible contract, including the fruits and interest. You must have the ability to return the things you owe to the other party to demand rescission. Furthermore, rescission cannot take place if the property is legally in the position of a third person who did not act in bad faith. They are in good faith. Take note of the requirements. First, they are in legal position, and second, they acted in good faith. If this happens, the third paragraph states that indemnity for damages may be demanded from the person causing the loss. Now let's proceed to Article 1386. Rescission referred to in number 1 and 2 of the Article 1381 shall not take place with respect to contracts approved by the courts. So, rescission is not possible for contracts approved by the courts. If a court approved the guardians or representative sales of the property, it cannot be rescinded if there is a lesion. So, for rescissible contracts entered into by guardians or representative in favor of ward or absentees, where there was lesion, if those contracts were approved by the courts, rescission will not take place. Article 1387. All contracts by virtue of which the debtor alienates property by gratuitous title are presumed to have been entered into in fraud of creditors. When the donor did not reserve sufficient property to pay all debts contracted before the donation, alienation by persons against whom some judgment has been rendered in an instance of or some rate of attachment has been issued. The decision or attachment need not refer to the property alienated, and it had been obtained by the parties seeking the rescission. In addition to this presumption, the design to defraud creditors may be proved in any other manner recognized with the law of evidence. So, alienation by onerous title are also presumed fraudulent when made by person against whom some judgment has been rendered, and in any instant or some rights of attachment has been issued. The decision or attachment need not refer to the property alienated and need not have been obtained by the parties seeking the rescission. In addition to this presumption, the design to defraud creditors may be proved in any other manner recognized by the law of evidence. This talks about the presumption of fraud. The law provides the law provides and this means transferring property from the debtor or owner to another person. A property is transferred gratuitously and the owner did not reserve sufficient property to pay all debts contracted before the donation. It is presumed to have been entered into in fraud of creditors. Of course, this is just a presumption. They can present proof that it was not done to defraud creditors. The burden of proof shifts. So, what contracts are presumed fraudulent? So, presumed fraudulent if the donor did not reserve sufficient property to pay all debts contracted before the donation. So, presumed fraudulent when made by persons against when some judgment has been rendered. For example, in onerous contracts, presumed fraudulent when made by persons against whom some judgment has been rendered or a writ of attachment has been issued, even if the writ of attachment was on piece of land and the debtor sells his car instead. The sale of the car is still presumed fraudulent. Furthermore, any creditor can ask for rescission, not just to the one who obtained the judgment. In Article 1388, this is purchasers in bad faith. Whoever acquires property in bad faith in fraud of creditors must return it. If it is impossible to return, they must indemnify the creditors for damages if there are multiple transfers. So this provision talks about the effects of bad faith. If a third person acted in bad faith, they must return the property if the sale is rescinded. But if it is impossible for them to return the property due to any cause, even a fortuitous event, their obligation is to indemnify the defrauded creditors for damages. So the second paragraph talk about subsequent transfer. For example, E, to defraud his creditors, sells his property to B, who is in bad faith. A, B then transfers it to C. If the defrauded creditors file a case for rescission and the contract is rescinded, the first purchasers in bad faith is B will be liable to pay damages. If the subsequent transferee C also acted in bad faith, she will be held liable next. The law says if there are two or more alienation, the first acquirer shall be liable first, and so on successively. So, let's proceed to Article 1389. Hindi ko na siya babasahin. So, in Article 1389, is, uh, is there a time limit for rescission? The answer is yes. The action to claim rescission must be recommenced within 4 years. Forward under guardianship, the 4 years begin only upon reaching the age of majority of 18 years old. For an absentee, the 4 years begin only when their domicile is known. For fraud cases, it is generally starts from time for the discovery of the fraud or perfection of the contract. So that would be all. Thank you for your watching these videos.